Well, coffee connoisseurs, buckle up because today's political brew is stronger than a triple espresso and twice as bitter. We've got a story so wild that if you told me 6 months ago that a Labour Prime Minister would be less popular than Margaret Thatcher in Sunderland of all places, I'd have suggested you lay off the caffeine and get some fresh air. But here we are, living in the political twilight zone where up is down, left is right, and Keir Starmer is apparently more despised than the Iron Lady herself in one of Labour's most loyal strongholds. Yes, you heard that correctly. A local caller on GB News just dropped the political equivalent of a nuclear bomb, claiming that Starmer is more hated than Maggie Thatcher in Sunderland. Now, for those of you who need a quick history lesson, that's like saying fish and chips are more unpopular than Brussels sprouts at a seaside restaurant. It simply shouldn't be possible, yet here we are, witnessing the impossible become reality faster than you can say a broken election promises. This isn't just any random political opinion either. This is coming from Gary McDonald, a self-described Labour bloke who's essentially performing political treason by comparing his own party's leader unfavourably to the woman who spent the 80s dismantling everything Labour stood for. It's like a Manchester United fan saying they prefer Liverpool's manager. The political world has officially gone completely bonkers. So what's driven a traditional Labour voter to make such an extraordinary comparison? Well, grab your strongest blend because Gary McDonald didn't hold back. He told Martin Daubney that not much has improved over the last year, which is political speak for everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't coming from some disgruntled Tory voter or political opposition. This is friendly fire from within Labour's own ranks. McDonald's complaint centres around immigration, and before anyone starts throwing around accusations, he's very clear about what he means. He says it's not about colour, creed, or religion, but about people coming illegally to this country. He's making the distinction between legal and illegal immigration, which is actually a pretty mainstream concern. But the fact that he feels compelled to clarify that he's not racist tells you everything you need about how toxic this debate has become. The man's frustration is palpable when he says, "We can't even look after our own homeless." It's a fair point, isn't it? While the government spending billions on accommodating asylum seekers in hotels, some of which are nicer than where many British citizens live, there are still people sleeping rough on the streets of every major city. It's like hosting a dinner party for strangers while your own family goes hungry. The optics are terrible, and the politics are even worse. But here's the kicker, McDonald's most damaging line: "You're forking out so much money and cutting everything we've paid into and are entitled to. You're giving it to people who are not entitled to it." This isn't just about immigration anymore. This is about a fundamental breakdown in the social contract between government and citizen. When traditional Labour voters start talking about entitlement and fairness in these terms, you know the party has lost the plot completely. The comparison to Margaret Thatcher isn't just hyperbole, it's a devastating political indictment. Thatcher closed mines, destroyed communities, and left industrial towns like Sunderland economically devastated. She was the political equivalent of Voldemort in these areas. For a Labour Prime Minister to be considered worse than her in Sunderland is like being told you're a worse cook than someone who burns water. It shouldn't be physically possible, yet here we are. What makes this even more remarkable is McDonald's admission that he's heard old-school Labour blokes say, "I wish we had someone as strong as Maggie Thatcher." Think about that for a moment. Traditional Labour voters are literally wishing for the return of their greatest political enemy because they see her as stronger than their current leader. It's like supporting your football team and then saying you preferred the opposing manager. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. This isn't happening in a political vacuum either. We're approaching the one-year anniversary of the civil unrest that swept across Britain following the Southport killings. Remember that chaos? 3 young girls murdered, false information spreading like wildfire on social media, and riots erupting across the country faster than you could say misinformation. The government's response was to crack down hard on the rioters while largely ignoring the underlying concerns that fueled the unrest. Now Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is issuing warnings about immigration having a profound impact on British society. It's like closing the stable door after the horse has not only bolted but taken up residence in the next county and started a family. She's emphasizing that ministers must recognize the real concerns that people have regarding migration levels. Revolutionary stuff, Angela. Really groundbreaking political insight there. The timing of Rayner's intervention is particularly telling. It follows clashes outside an Essex hotel where asylum seekers were housed, after one resident was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage girl. These aren't abstract policy discussions anymore, they're real incidents affecting real communities. And when the government's response is essentially "we must listen to concerns," it sounds less like leadership and more like a panic response to polling data. What's particularly frustrating is that Downing Street declined to confirm whether Starmer anticipated another wave of riots similar to last summer's chaos. They won't even acknowledge the possibility of more unrest, which is like a weather forecaster refusing to mention the possibility of rain while standing in a thunderstorm. The political tin ear is absolutely deafening. Rayner's outlined multiple factors straining community cohesion: economic instability, rapid industrial decline, technological shifts, and increasing isolation from excessive online activity. It's like she's reading from a textbook about social breakdown while completely ignoring that her government is supposed to be addressing these issues, not just cataloguing them like some academic observer. The trust in public institutions has deteriorated significantly, according to Rayner, contributing to societal tensions. Well, there's a shocker. When you spend a year telling people their concerns about immigration are racist while simultaneously failing to address any of their actual problems, trust tends to evaporate faster than morning mist. Who could have predicted such an outcome? What we're witnessing is a government that won a landslide election victory and then proceeded to govern as if they'd lost. They've managed the extraordinary feat of alienating their core voters while failing to win over anyone new. It's like buying a lottery ticket, winning the jackpot, and then immediately setting the money on fire. The political incompetence is genuinely breathtaking. The Sunderland situation is particularly symbolic because it represents everything that's gone wrong with Labour's approach. This is a town that's voted Labour for decades, through good times and bad. These are people who stuck with the party when it was trendy to abandon traditional politics. And now they're comparing their own party's leader unfavourably to Margaret Thatcher. If that's not a wake-up call, nothing is. Gary McDonald's comments about councillors not listening to the vast majority of people hits at something deeper than just immigration policy. It's about political representation itself. When voters feel like their elected representatives aren't just ignoring their concerns but actively dismissing them as illegitimate, democracy starts breaking down. And when democracy breaks down, you get riots, unrest, and political chaos. The government's response to all this has been to double down on their existing approach while occasionally throwing out vague statements about listening to concerns. It's like a restaurant getting terrible reviews and responding by serving the same food but with nicer napkins. The fundamental problems remain unaddressed while the presentation gets slightly better. What's particularly galling is that many of these issues were entirely predictable. Immigration has been a contentious political issue for decades. The housing crisis wasn't created overnight. The breakdown in community cohesion didn't happen in a vacuum. These are long-term problems that require long-term solutions, but this government seems incapable of thinking beyond the next news cycle. The comparison to Margaret Thatcher is so politically toxic because it suggests that even her authoritarian approach was preferable to Starmer's apparent indecision. Thatcher might have been wrong about many things, but she was decisively wrong. She had convictions, however misguided. Starmer appears to have focus groups. The contrast couldn't be starker. Meanwhile, we're sitting here waiting to see if there'll be another summer of riots, while the government pretends everything's fine and occasionally issues statements about recognizing concerns. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash while the driver insists everything's under control even as the vehicle careens off the road. The really tragic part is that Labour had such an opportunity after their election victory. They could have addressed immigration concerns honestly, tackled the housing crisis decisively, and rebuilt trust in public institutions. Instead, they've managed to make things worse while alienating everyone in the process. It's a masterclass in political self-destruction. So there you have it, coffee addicts, a Labour Prime Minister more unpopular than Margaret Thatcher in Sunderland. If that doesn't wake up the party leadership, nothing will. We're living through a political realignment that nobody saw coming, where traditional loyalties mean nothing and voter anger is reaching levels that should terrify anyone in power. What do you think? Has Starmer really become more unpopular than Thatcher in traditional Labour heartlands? Are we heading for another summer of unrest, or will the government finally start listening to voters' concerns? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button for more political chaos delivered with your daily caffeine fix, and remember, in British politics, just when you think things can't get any weirder, they absolutely can and will. Until next time, keep your coffee strong and your political expectations extremely low.